Hello, and thank you for joining me on another edition of the show, Broadcast Unfiltered. Last Friday, Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in a rather surprising move, announced changes to the top hierarchy of Nigeria's military establishment. In the statement released from the presidency, the president appointed General Olufemi Oluyede to replace General Christopher Musa as the new Chief of Defense Staff. The new Chief of Army Staff is Major General Wahidi Shaibu, while Air Vice Marshal S.K. Aneke is Chief of Air Staff. Rear Admiral I. Abbas is the new Chief of Naval Staff. And Chief of Defense Intelligence, Major General E.A. Undedindeye, retained his position. Now, it is nothing strange. It is within the powers of the president to make these appointments in his position as the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. However, the shakeup within the military is generating quite some debate within civil society, online, as well as mainstream media. This is given the timing of these changes. Very recently, about 2 weeks ago, there were online news reports that an alleged coup that was foiled. That news has since made its way even to mainstream media, and from last week until even early this week, it has been the subject of discussion whether there was a coup or if there wasn't a coup. It is curious that the presidency has remained mute about this news. But the defense headquarters did issue a statement denying that there was ever a coup. The statement from the defense headquarters alleged that 16 military officers that were cited in the online news report as being the brains behind the failed coup were actually arrested, or they are being detained, let me say so, because they failed to pass their promotion exam or for issues related to discipline. If that is a sufficient clarification for the arrest of these 16 people, I think Nigerians are still waiting for answers. So what I really want us to talk about is whether you see these changes by the president, whether this is about security reform or these changes were fueled by fear of instability within the military hierarchy. Of course, we all know the historical context of Nigeria, that we have suffered, bouts of military rule, coups, from between 1966 and 1999. The period between 1999 and date actually stands as the longest unbroken period of democratic rule in Nigeria. So it is quite concerning, I must say, that for a country, its citizens has come to accept that democratic rule is the way for us to go, civilian rule is the way for us to go, that we are suddenly confronted by the truth or otherwise of a failed coup attempt. The other thing is to ask ourselves, why are we seeing, what is fueling, or what might have foiled the desire by these military officers to even contemplate, planning a coup against a constitutionally a government that's a constitutionally constituted government. I hope you don't mind me using those terms. I recall that in 1999, when the current Democratic Republic came in place, it came from years of struggle against military dictatorship. And then there was this slogan, never again to military rule. And since 1999 till this present period, a lot has been done, to instill professional discipline in Nigeria's military to subjugate them again to civilian control. And up until this period, we thought that had succeeded. So, but what can be fueling this? Yes, the country is still facing challenges, particularly the challenge of successive civilian government between 99 and this period to uh, govern and deliver to citizens' expectations. The jury is out, obviously, because Nigeria's democracy, to a large extent, has underperformed. You look at indices are like elections, how credible our elections have been. We've had, high moments, and then, we've had low moments, and but is that enough reason, for some people to sit somewhere if this story is if the coup rumors are true, for them to think the next thing is, oh, we must plan to remove the civilian government. Now, could this also be a contagion, given what we've seen in the Sahel countries, of which Nigeria is also one? We've seen coups in Mali that was successful. We've seen in Niger it was successful. Burkina Faso it's successful, and there is also some narrative being pushed out there, particularly when you follow, you see what comes out from places like Burkina Faso, how the military established junta there is presented as a performing government. And I recall when the growing group of Nigerians who are so much, uh, you know, dissatisfied with the performance of our democratic process, and the institutions, that they are now open to the idea of military rule back in Nigeria. Do you think it's also the contagion effect of what is happening in the Sahel countries, or you think this is purely, motivated by the lack of, democratic dividend? Let me just call it that people expect to see in the country. Uh, and then lastly, I would also ask, what do you think this suggest for Nigeria's leadership position, both within the West Africa sub-region and Africa at large, deal with elements like these, who do not mind upstaging the democratic order in the country? Where does that leave Nigeria with the desire to occupy a permanent seat in the United Nations, for example? Where does that put Nigeria, even in terms of our standing within the African Union, and giving our own very activist stand against the military incursion into places, into Niger Republic, and now Nigeria was in the vanguard of saying, look, democratic order must be restored in Niger. So, but this is what I would like to hear from you. And what should be the response of our elected leaders, from the president down to the local councillor? Should they see this as a wake-up call that it is becoming more urgent, very, very important, that they listen to the people, allow the democratic processes to stand, respect the rule of law, deliver according to the wishes and aspirations of the people, respect the right of citizens to vote and for their votes to count, even in elections? Because so long as we continue to have elections that whose outcome raises doubts in the minds of the people. It continues, it will affect the legitimacy of the government in power. So what do we do? What lessons can the country take, from these to move forward, to consolidate our democratic processes, and to make sure that Nigeria never resorts again. I mean, that military rule never returns to Nigeria, and that will continue along this democratic path. So I'd like to hear from you what you think of this appointment, whether you think it's for fear or you think this is about security reform, why you think, the idea of a coup sounds appealing to some people within Nigeria's military establishment, and what lessons can our leaders take even from this rumor, whether true or not, to consolidate democratic rule. Thank you again for joining me on this show today, and I look forward to engaging with you again in the next episode. So long.